The news broke this morning, April 21st. Pope Francis passed away in Rome. He was 88.
That's right. And in this deep dive, we really want to focus on, the circumstances surrounding his death, using the latest reports coming out.
Yeah, what do we actually know? The Vatican has put out a statement on the cause.
They have. And our sort of mission here is to unpack that sequence of events, the medical factors, basically give everyone a clear picture of these final details.
Okay, so let's get right into it then. The official word, it came from Professor Andrea Arcangeli. He's the Director of Health and Hygiene for the Vatican City State. And he stated the cause of death was a cerebral stroke. What exactly does that entail, medically speaking?
Well, a cerebral stroke, it's basically a disruption of blood flow to the brain. It can cause damage very, very quickly.
Right.
And in Pope Francis's case, Professor Arcangeli reported that after the stroke, he rapidly progressed into a coma. Okay.
And from there, the ultimate cause of death was listed as irreversible cardiocirculatory collapse.
Yes, which is essentially heart failure. That's the term most people would recognize.
Heart failure.
And they confirmed this through an electrocardiogram recording, an ECG.
Okay. So stroke leading to coma, leading to heart failure. Now, how does this connect, or does it connect, to his known health issues? Because he did have some, didn't he?
He did. The reports consistently mentioned type 2 diabetes, bronchiectasis, and hypertension. High blood pressure.
Bronchiectasis, that's a lung condition, right? Can you tell us a bit more about that in this context?
Yeah, bronchiectasis is a chronic condition. It means the airways in the lungs are permanently widened, which makes it harder to clear mucus and, increases the risk of infections.
I see. So how might these all tie together? Diabetes, the hypertension, this lung condition.
Well, conditions like diabetes and hypertension, over time, they can damage blood vessels throughout the body, including those leading to the brain. So that could potentially increase susceptibility to a stroke.
Makes sense.
And then having a pre-existing lung condition like bronchiectasis, that certainly adds to the overall vulnerability of the system, especially if other things go wrong.
Things have been going wrong recently, hadn't they? That respiratory failure?
Exactly. We really need to remember his more recent struggles. That respiratory failure came after a bout of pneumonia.
And it led to that really long hospital stay. 38 days. That's quite a stretch.
A very significant time. He was only released on March 23rd.
Wow. An illness like that, pneumonia leading to respiratory failure, it must just put a tremendous strain on the body,
Right.
Especially for someone his age with those other conditions.
Absolutely. It strongly suggests his system was under considerable stress leading up to this.
But there were some positive signs during that hospital stay, or at least positive reports.
There were, actually. It's interesting. His doctor, Sergio Alfieri, he praised Pope Francis, called him a very cooperative patient.
That is interesting, dealing with all that.
Yeah, and Dr. Alfieri also made that comment, suggesting the global prayers might have played a role in his temporary recovery.
That's quite a statement from a medical professional.
It really highlights the unique position he held, doesn't it? The global focus. And Alfieri's description, he apparently said the situation was lost twice.
Lost twice.
Yes, but then followed by what he termed a miracle recovery. It just emphasizes how precarious his health really was during that time, really fragile.
It certainly sounds like it. And Pope Francis himself, he knew people were praying. He acknowledged it, didn't he?
He did. There's that quote from March 6th while he was still in the hospital. He specifically thanked people, said something like, "From the bottom of my heart for your prayers for my health from the square."
So he was very aware, very connected still.
Exactly. And despite all this, the serious illness, the fragility, what's really quite remarkable is how active he managed to be in the weeks right before he passed away.
It is striking. You look at the timeline. He was at his weekly general audience back in February.
And also in February, he delivered a homily. It was at a mass for the armed forces, police, and security personnel. So these weren't just small private things.
No, definitely public duties. Then, after that long hospital stay, he came out onto the balcony of the Gemelli Hospital when he was discharged in March. People saw him.
That was a big moment, yeah. Seeing him reappear publicly after nearly 40 days inside.
Very powerful imagery. And it didn't stop there.
Yeah.
Into April, just a week or so before he died, April 13th.
Palm Sunday, yes. Yeah. He greeted cardinals at St. Peter's Square. He was in a wheelchair, but he was there at the end of the Mass.
Still participating. Speaks volumes about his dedication.
It really does. And then almost unbelievably, the day before he died, Easter Sunday itself.
He celebrated Easter Mass at St. Peter's Basilica.
He did, and
And
even led the prayer from the central balcony afterwards, the Urbi et Orbi blessing.
that's just an immense undertaking, given everything we've just discussed about his health.
Truly immense. And then there's another layer to that final day, just hours before he passed away on Easter Sunday.
He had a visitor.
Yes, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance visited him.
Right, I saw that mentioned. And Vice President Vance commented on it afterwards, didn't he? On X, I think.
He did. He expressed his sadness, of course, but also noted, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, that he was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill.
Obviously very ill. That's quite a direct observation from someone who saw him just hours before the end. Really underscores his condition.
It does. It adds a very personal, first-hand perspective to those final hours. And, you know, the source material also mentioned that visual timeline, the photos from Getty Images, Vatican Media from February and April this year.
Right.
Looking at those, you can sort of track his appearance, see him continuing these public engagements, even as, you know, his health was clearly fluctuating or declining.
So pulling it all together then, the official cause.
Yeah.
Cerebral stroke. That led to the irreversible heart failure.
Correct.
And this seems very likely linked to, or at least exacerbated by, his pre-existing conditions, the diabetes, the bronchiectasis, the hypertension.
And almost certainly made more challenging by that very recent, very severe respiratory illness and the long hospitalization.
Right. And despite that period of, well, miracle recovery, as his doctor put it, and this really surprising string of public appearances right up to Easter Sunday.
His underlying health vulnerabilities were, in the end, insurmountable.
Yeah. You know, thinking about it, what's really striking is that resilience, isn't it?
Yeah.
That commitment he showed.
It's quite something. To continue with those public duties, the audiences, the masses, the Easter celebrations, when he was clearly, as Vice President Vance noted, very ill, it makes you ponder the depth of his dedication.
It really does. It kind of brings up those big questions about, balancing a hugely public life, immense responsibilities with very real, very significant personal health struggles. The impact of a figure like that on the world stage, even in fragility.
Absolutely.
Well, hopefully, this deep dive has offered a bit more nuance, a clearer picture beyond just the headline news of his passing.
Yeah, perhaps giving folks something more to reflect on regarding these final details, and maybe that incredible commitment he demonstrated right up until the very end.